Hello, my name is Jon Bernard, Superintendent of Schools in North Reading, and I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Inside NRPS. My guest today is the Director of Finance and Operations for the North Reading Public Schools, Mr. Michael Connelly. Michael, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard.
It's nice to have you, Michael. So, Michael, I think I'd like to start by giving you an opportunity to share with the community a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and the kind of work experience you have, the work that you've done, and talk then from that point probably about some of the specific work that you're doing in the community of North Reading. So if you'd like to just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I've been in North Reading now, the Director of Finance and Operations, for a little over 2 years. I started in July of 2013. And previously to coming in North Reading, I've been in the field of school business and school finance for really the last 10 years. I started at a charter school called the Excel Academy Charter School, which was a small charter school servicing about 200 students in grades 6 through 8 in the East Boston, Chelsea area, and worked there for a couple years, moved on to the Wellesley Public Schools where I worked in the business office, and then worked for the Wakefield Public Schools for about 4 years in the very similar role here as the school business manager, and also worked for Lincoln Sudbury School District as well before I come in directly to North Reading. So certainly have the experiences I have received prior to coming to North Reading, I thought certainly gave me a well-rounded background in the area of school finance and school business. And coming to North Reading, to me, it was a great fit. I personally live in Reading, and I have a small family with my wife in Reading, just over the North Reading line, and so it's been a great fit. I've really enjoyed my time here in North Reading. I've really enjoyed getting to know the community, working with all the other administrators, working with the staff, working with the town officials, and being involved in various different boards and committees. It's really been a rewarding experience, and I've really enjoyed my time here so far.
Well, Michael, I'd like to say too, on behalf of the school district and the community, it's you mentioned about it being a good fit for you. I think it's been a very good fit for North Reading with you too.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
I think we had, just to remind the community that when the prior business manager, who was called the business manager at that time, the title has changed under you, Mr. Carl Nelson indicated that he would be retiring. Carl was someone that had worked in the district for a long time, had a very good reputation. I think that there was a level of anxiety that he was leaving, and would we be able to replace Carl? And again, just to remind the community, we had taken our time as a school district to kind of go through a couple of search processes that we were not happy with candidates that we had interviewed, but ultimately we went through a search that netted you, and I think it's fair to say, from my point of view, and certainly from all those that speak with me, we have enjoyed very much your work in North Reading, and it's a pleasure having you. So
thank you.
You do a great job. So Michael, I think, again, for the educational piece of the community, I think most people would probably understand what does it mean to be the director of finance. There's budgeting, and it's kind of the oversight of the monetary operations of the school district. But what does it mean to be overseeing as the director of operations? What does operations mean in the school district?
Sure. Well, there are several things that fall under the role of director of finance and the operations. I think there are really 3 or 4 key components and key programs of oversight and management that fall under the operations role. First and foremost, I think you have the food service program, which is oversight of that program, both financially as well as the operations of that program. That allows me to work very, very closely with the director of that program, and we have a vendor of Chartwell's that we've had a long-standing relationship with over the last 10 plus years. So it's certainly managing that program, number one, ensuring that we're compliant with all the nutritional guidelines and regulations both from the federal and state level. There is several financial reports and reporting on a monthly basis that has to be submitted to the Department of Education, ensuring the timely submission of those reports. certainly monitoring the financials and monitoring the mail counts, and certainly trying to produce the highest quality program in terms of delivering a high quality product to the students of North Reading, nutritional value and variety of options. That's always going to be first and foremost of any program, as well as keeping the eyes on the financials and managing both product costs for the program, managing the various personnel requirements, and also ensuring that the program has what it needs, it has the proper equipment, it has the proper, when there's a need to make some capital investments in the equipment and upgrades and the software, that is happening and those needs are being attended to. So it's certainly working very collaboratively with the directors and the food service managers and the staff, and hearing their input and trying to certainly make it all work by getting the program what it needs to deliver a high quality program. And we've certainly discussed this over the last few years since I've been here. It's certainly been a topic of I think a lot of discussion in North Reading, the food service program, and we've certainly, as of late, been happy to report that the program is certainly doing much better financially, and the participation of the students in North Reading is certainly increasing, and we're certainly very happy to see that. That's to us, that means that the students are having a nutritional meal every day. They're getting a meal of high quality, and then it's a benefit to the district and the community in terms of we're able to put some money back into the program and what the program needs. The higher those petition rates are, and the mail counts and so forth, and those have been certainly trending upward, which has been great to see. And
what do you attribute that to, Michael? Why do you think that is?
I think there's certainly a few factors that go into the increase in participation. I think every district, North Reading being one of them, experienced a lot of challenges about a little over 3 years ago with the additional nutritional guidelines and state requirements that were mandated at that time as part of the Healthy Act that was passed back
federal
in
government.
The federal government act that was passed in 2013. So when that act was passed, there was a need to cut back on portion sizes. There was a need to kind of, in some cases, eliminate some of the really popular meals and items on the menu that we had, a la carte items that we had certainly sold before. And fortunately, over the last couple of years, the state, and through that feedback, a lot of school business managers and school food service directors have been able to cut back on a lot of the strict requirements, but still maintain nutritional meals of high quality. And that's allowed us to provide a little more flexibility, a little more options that the students really want. And we've been able to get a little more creative in bringing back some greater variety of options. So I think that has contributed to the last year, certainly. I think...
do you think our new middle high school campus
yes.
is a factor?
So that's the other large factor is the new middle school, high school campus has provided a beautiful state-of-the-art facility for the food service program. It's a beautiful cafeteria. We certainly have the most state-of-the-art, the best you could offer in terms of equipment and in that cafeteria. So we've really been able to. And
the display is nice. It's a newer facility. The food it's displayed nicer, and I think maybe that's creating a level of attraction that wasn't there before.
So we're certainly getting offering more options. The display is beautiful, and I think that's all contributed to students wanting to turn to the lunch program. We've seen at the high school for last year when the new high school opened, meal counts at the high school went up over 15% in some cases in some months. We've seen even a higher increase at the middle school this year for the first month of the school year, and the high school is continuing to increase. So I certainly think the facility and the display and the additional options we're able to offer has certainly had a big contributing factor to that program, certainly doing much better in recent years. Certainly the staff, and they work very, very hard. They have a great
Yes, they do.
relationship with the students. They have a great rapport with the students. I've had the opportunity to walk down to the lunch, several days. We often do that together.
Right.
And I see the type of relationship that the staff has with some of the students, and that to me is all a huge factor. That means students like kind of that daily routine of coming through the lunch line and connecting with the staff and having those quick conversations certainly goes a long way. So I think a combination of the state helping us out by reducing some of the strict guidelines that they did offer a few years ago, the upgrades we've made to the facility and the new facility and with the display and the offerings, and really the hard work of the staff, and with Chartwell's management and the food service director, Anna McGovern, does an excellent job, and the work that the staff does with the students every day. Those are all key factors that contribute to increasing participation and having certainly a high quality program.
So it sounds like food service management, your oversight of that is another large segment of the work that you do. What other departments, would you oversee in your role?
So to me, the next largest department and largest that I certainly oversee would be the facility maintenance and the building and grounds department. So I certainly work very closely with Wayne Hardacre, the director of building and grounds, to oversee the facility maintenance of all the schools. That's a huge priority, a huge focus of the position. We certainly, and it's certainly very, very important to the safety of the community, safety of the students, safety of the staff. We want to provide certainly a safe, clean environment for students and staff, and ensuring the buildings have what they need, ensuring that the staff has what they need. We have adequate staffing, adequate equipment to maintain and clean the buildings properly is certainly a big part of this position. I work closely with the Director of Building and Grounds in budget development, ensuring that the program's going to be or the department's going to be adequately funded. And what plays into that conversations is capital planning, and we always want to project 3, 5, and 10 years out in terms of the needs of the department. That, of course, has changed significantly over the last 2 or 3 years with the new high school, middle school campus. It's a beautiful state-of-the-art campus, but it certainly has had a big change with how we do business, with how we look to the future of what our capital needs are, and it certainly has changed certainly for the better, the focus of that department. And I think it's a huge task, and it's an extremely important one to make sure that the maintenance of the facilities, the grounds, all the schools are certainly maintained properly.
I agree, it is a huge task. So in some ways, and I know that there are more responsibilities, maybe we can talk about them in just a minute, transportation being one, but you talk about food services, you talk about facilities maintenance, facilities management, the maintenance of our schools. In a lot of ways, I say this with all due respect, Michael, but you're sort of the guy behind the curtain, a little bit of behind the scenes.
Sure.
Kind of, it's you're out there. I think certainly you take an active role in community events and committees, and we're going to talk more about those a little bit during this segment. But it's a lot of the work that you do are the things that people don't necessarily see, and I think it's important for the community to understand. Food service operations, facilities management, those are huge undertakings. In addition to the budgeting and the development of the budget, the management of the finances of the school district, it's a huge responsibility. Let's talk a little bit, if we could, Michael, because transportation is another area in which you have a significant responsibility. What could you share with us about that?
Sure. So there's certainly a lot of time and effort, and certainly another very important responsibility in terms of operating the schools is bus transportation. Mm-hmm. So I do oversee certainly the busing operation. We have a contract with North Suburban, who we've had a long-standing relationship with, and certainly the management of that contract, the management of the fleet of buses under that contract is a big part of my role. And then certainly annually coming up with adequate bus routes and managing the optional busing program for the students that may not qualify for free busing, but certainly opt to participate and purchase a bus pass through the optional busing program. So a huge part of, I think, certainly my responsibility is to work closely with my staff in my office to develop routes, bus routes, and that are adequately designed to ensure timely and consistent, service to each of the schools. So that's, first and foremost, we want the students to be transported safely and on a consistent, timely schedule, so they can arrive at schools on time, in a safe manner, as well as in the afternoon on their way home from school. So
and I would assume that work associated with transportation responsibilities is a daily activity for you.
It certainly can be very much a daily oversight and a daily activity. There's certainly a lot of work goes into building the routes and overseeing that process in the summer before the start of the school year. Mm-hmm. So summer is a very busy time of the year where we're looking at the list of students that are interested in purchasing a bus pass or being part of the busing program, and we're certainly designing the bus routes, and we certainly work hard to design routes in a manner that will provide the safe transportation to and from school. We work closely with the police department and the safety officer and the school resource officer. We meet with them during the summer months to look at the bus routes before they're finalized and published. We do meet with the bus company and the bus drivers in August every year, where we go over the bus routes, make sure the bus drivers certainly have all their questions answered. If they have any concerns, we want them to certainly bring that to the table before the start of the school year so they can be addressed. We certainly reinforce to the bus company and the bus drivers the safety protocols that are part of the contract that we certainly want each bus driver to follow on a daily basis. So we go over a lot of those safety protocols, and we request that the bus drivers go out and do dry runs before the start of the school year and bring feedback and concerns certainly to my office, and we try to make changes to optimize and to deliver, again, consistent, safe, efficient, bus service to and from school. So there's certainly a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes in the development of proper bus routes and bus stops that before the start of the school year. And then what always happens every year is there's certainly a need to assess the bus routes after the first couple of weeks of school. And once now we have we've received feedback from the bus drivers and in many cases parents that I have conversations with, and we make changes as needed to improve the service. And there's always a need to make some adjustments.
Sure.
After the first couple of weeks of school. So there's a lot of management of certainly the routes and the bus stops and the contract. There's also the financial management, again, of not only managing what might be a 3, 4, or 5-year contract and putting that out to bid on an ongoing schedule to certainly meet state guidelines of procurement guidelines. So that all comes into play as part of my responsibility. Right. As well as, each and every day, there's not too many days that go by that I don't have a conversation with their dispatch office or a conversation with the school main offices, the principals, to deal with any issues that may be coming up. And we try to do that as efficiently as we can. We try to communicate any issues or any that's going to affect the schedule to and from school.
And when we get into the
parents.
winter months, that becomes maybe a little more challenging.
Correct.
Trying to oversee effectively the operation of the transportation during the winter.
Yep, absolutely. So there's
So
a lot
Michael,
that goes into it.
we've talked about the operations aspect of your work, transportation, food services, facility management. Let's now, if we could, shift gears a little bit, maybe toward the finance end of your
Sure.
work, because that, I think I would venture to guess that that's, probably the most significant
Sure.
piece of it. Not that these aren't significant, but
absolutely.
the overriding responsibility is the oversight of the budget for the school district. So maybe for the community's benefit, you could just talk a little bit about, what does that look like from the Director of Finance and Operations standpoint when we talk about the development of the school district's budget on an annual basis?
Sure. So certainly, first and foremost and very important piece of that is the budget development process that we do every year. And we start that process very early in each school year. I think a lot of people may be surprised at how early that budget development process really starts. So it's almost once the beginning of that fiscal year begins, we almost immediately start planning for the next budget cycle and the next preparation and development of the following school year's budget. And that process really starts in September, where we start having preliminary conversations with the administrative team. We start having conversations with the school committee, where we start preparing what our goal is going to be as a district and as a school committee, looking forward out to the following year.
So if you don't mind me saying, Michael, so we start the fiscal year on July 1. The
Yep.
work starts in earnest for the development of the next year's budget in September, and that
Correct.
really carries through till June with the
It
June
does.
town meeting. So
It
it's
does.
really July and August are maybe the only 2 months of the school year where there isn't a kind of a hyper-focused effort on the
Correct.
budget, but they're not that.
Correct.
That doesn't mean that it goes away even in those 2 months, because now you're starting up a new fiscal year in July, but it's almost a year-long process.
That's true. That is definitely the process that we go through each year. It's almost as you close out one fiscal year, which is
Right.
really going on in the months of July. You're closing out the prior fiscal year, completing all the necessary paperwork and reports that need to be completed, and then you're kicking off the start of financially the next fiscal year, which is again on July through June 30th basis. And then almost immediately as you kick off one fiscal year in July and August and September, you're beginning the early stages of preparing and developing, the early stages of the next fiscal year budget.
Right.
And that really starts off with a discussion on goals, a discussion and review of our strategic plan as a district. So all these things need to be in line when we start talking about budget preparation and budget development. And as you know, in the work that you're doing with myself and the other administrators and the staff in North Reading, we are certainly in the midst of planning out a new 5-year plan for the district for continuous improvement, an educational plan. And there's several initiatives, objectives, and goals within that plan, which to me is really a key driver of not only the budget, but in the development of the school committee's budget goals. We certainly want everything to be in line and be consistent together. So as early as those conversations start, certainly feeds into the building of the budget goals, which get adopted at the end of September every year. And then once those goals are adopted, that really kind of drives the process of that we go through internally with the administrators in terms of the development of that next fiscal year's budget.
Which that occurred in October.
That occurred in October, correct. So we kicked off at a meeting in really early October with the administrative team, which is all the school principals, all the budget directors, and budget leaders and directors of the various programs, really what the school committee's goals are, what their certainly main objectives are of getting accomplished. That's always in line with, I think, our goals are as well. And we start to set guidelines and start to plan for that next fiscal year. And that kicked off in October, so that the principals and the directors are kind of hard at work right now preparing their budgets for next year, analyzing past year's trends, thinking about what type of initiatives and objectives and what the needs are, and setting priorities. And they'll be doing that process at their individual schools with their individual programs and departments and staff, and submitting that back to certainly myself as the Director of Finance and Operations by really the end of this month. And that will allow us to start the early stages of the development of a draft budget, a preliminary budget for next fiscal year. That happens in December and in early January. And then sometime by the mid-January, early February, we really have the beginnings of a preliminary budget that we start conversations with the various stakeholders in the process here in North Reading, not only our administrative team and various financial subcommittees, but we also start those conversations with the finance planning team, which is a team that's made up of the various chairs and vice chairs of all the major boards in town, certainly the Board of Selectmen, chair and vice chair, the school committee chair and vice chair, the finance committee chair and vice chair, and certainly the town administrator, the director of finance of the town, myself as the school finance director, and yourself as the superintendent. It's a 10-member committee that all take part and meet really throughout the fiscal year, each and every month throughout the school year. But we really will start to pick up conversations on the development of that next fiscal year budget, I think, in early January. And that really is the focus of a lot of our meetings through January, February, March, as we work towards that June town meeting.
And if you don't mind me saying, Michael, I think, again, for the benefit of the community, the value of that finance planning team is so great, in my opinion, because it's just there are open lines of communication. There's an opportunity for people to gain information on what the needs are of the various departments across the town, not only the school department, but all the municipal departments as well. Michael, you've talked a lot about goals, and I think I might just like to, if I could, take a minute to go back to, I think it's important that we highlight that the work of setting goals for our district is very important. And our school committee in the summer months this past year met twice and had pretty lengthy budget and goals development workshops that I think the community largely would not know this unless they were reading something in the transcript. But the school committee really does hunker down, and they work very, very diligently to craft goals that, in my opinion, and I think others would share this, really are aimed at supporting teaching and learning and making sure that our schools have the resources and the people to do the good work that needs to go on in our schools. And I think that work, I don't think, can be minimized. The school committee takes a very active role in that. And from that, it's true, I think you would agree, that the goals of the district are enhanced through the work that the school committee does.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the strategic plan that we have in place. Currently, we have a 5-year strategic plan that we're completing. We're in year 5 of that plan, and we've already begun our work on the next 5-year strategic plan. And the alignment, the level of alignment from the school committee's goals to the district strategic plan to the individual school goals that are developed by school councils is very good. That alignment's important. It kind of focuses everybody in a direction where we're kind of all working together to get where we want to be as a school district. And I think it's just a point that I wanted to highlight. You mentioned, Michael, about the finance planning team again. Just significant value there. I know you also serve on the town's capital improvements planning committee. Capital improvements and the needs of the capital improvements across the school district and across the town really takes on a pretty significant amount of time for people. And can you talk a little bit about what that capital improvements planning committee, how it's formed, who are the people that serve on it, and what the primary work is?
Sure. So the Capital Improvement Planning Committee began in North Reading, as my understanding is, shortly before I came here, about a year before. And what it is it's a committee made up of, again, some of the major stakeholders in that process. It definitely includes people that are involved in on the finance committee. Don Kelleher is on the finance committee. He's the chair of that capital committee, and he does an excellent job, certainly, organizing and scheduling the meetings and coordinating the committee's work. And it consists of members of the finance committee. It consists of members of the Board of Selectmen, members of the school committee, certainly myself as the director of finance and operations of the school, and the town administrator and the director of finance of the town are all part of the committee. So what we really try to look at is, as opposed to what used to happen before the development of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, where each department would kind of go off in their own kind of in isolation and put together what their needs were. They might be given an allocation of funds, and they would kind of work within that allocation, and everyone was kind of doing their own thing, kind of working more independently. The development of this committee is a committee that kind of school and town-wide look at all the needs, large capital needs of the entire community.
And how is a large capital need defined?
So a large capital need is defined by, number one, it has to have really a unit cost or a total cost of at least $25,000, and it has to have a useful life of at least 5 years or more. So
could you give us an example or two of an item that might be looked at this year by the Capital Improvements Planning Committee?
So for instance, a big part of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee's request would be replacement of major equipment, vehicles by either the Department of Public Works or the school department, either their fleet of vehicles and major equipment that certainly would have a cost greater than $25,000 and a useful life that would exceed 5 years. You know, in most cases, these vehicles may last up to 10 years.
So this could be a maintenance truck, say, for the Department of Public Works. In the school department, it might be a van that we use to transport children with special needs.
Correct.
Right. Those are good examples.
So certainly maintaining and developing a replacement schedule for the various fleet of vehicles maintained by the town departments and maintained by the school departments are certainly a big part of the capital plan.
Mm-hmm.
Large technology needs and projects to make upgrades to certainly the wireless infrastructure upgrades that may have a project that may cost in excess of $25,000. Large computer replacements to upgrade an entire computer lab or upgrade computer replacements of an entire department that would certainly have a cost greater than $25,000. So there's certainly the technology needs are a big part of the capital plan, both from the town side and the school side. Many of the highway initiatives to make road improvements and to supplement the Chapter 90 funds that the town receives for highway improvements and road improvements are a big part of the capital request that we certainly review on an annual basis. So they're really high-ticket projects that both the town and the school need to take on, from maintenance of facilities, maintenance of roads and programs within the community, maintenance of the school's facilities, maintenance and upgrades and ongoing replacements of both technology as well as the fleet of vehicles is certainly all items that represent a big part of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee's work.
And it sounds to me, Michael, and my impressions are that by forming this committee and having them meet very regularly, I know that the meetings occur very regularly, that it allows the community to kind of set forth a vision a number of years out so that proper planning can take place to say, we know this might not be a need today that we have in fiscal year 16 or even next year, fiscal year 17, but instead we can anticipate that in, say, fiscal year 20, a few years down the road, but it brings the attention to that item and its need early on, so that proper planning can take place to hopefully secure the items that are needed. And again, I think for the community's benefit, much like we do with our strategic planning within the school district, I think from the community's point of view, from a municipal standpoint, that there is a lot of good work going on to kind of set the stage and craft a vision to say, we know down the road these are things that we might find ourselves needing or wanting to do, and I think it's probably a combination of those.
Absolutely,
there are wants, but there are real true needs.
Right.
So. Is there anything else, Michael, that you would want to add about the Capital Improvement Planning Committee?
I think one of the main objectives that the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, under certainly Don Kelleher's leadership, is that we've been able to develop a funding strategy and as a vision, as you just spoke to, into the future based on the various funding mechanisms that are available to us and to the community to develop a consistent level of funding to support the various projects that really the community and the schools need. And if that, prior to that we didn't really have a funding strategy or that vision, so it was, every year it was sort of difficult to plan forward. Now that all the requests from all the departments come to this committee, they're sort of weighed and kind of ranked and certainly prioritized by the committee. We certainly spend a lot of time allowing the department heads to come in and certainly talk about their need and give us that feedback to what that need is and what their request was. So we get all the information that is available to us. We certainly receive and take in by hearing out detailed presentations by the various department leaders that have submitted the requests. We spend an entire meeting or two making field trips out to look at various projects that have been cited in the capital improvement.
So an example of that might be the Hood School, the Hood
Correct.
Elementary School parking lot,
Correct.
which was in need of paving. I know the Capital Improvements Planning Committee last year went
Correct.
out and actually visited that site to see just to what degree the
Correct.
the parking lot had been deteriorating, and they ranked that as a high
Correct.
need, and
Absolutely.
ultimately that project has been funded over 2 years.
Absolutely. So that's a perfect example. So that's some of the work that the committee will do. We'll go out. We'll make field trips. We'll we'll actually assess the requests right on site, and that was a field trip we made last year, and it was certainly determined that the need was there, and it was a high priority item that was certainly supported by the capital committee.
And without something like this, it would seem to me that there would be a risk for a community that doesn't plan, that they're always reacting to needs.
Correct.
When a van breaks down and is no longer in service, now there's a need to go out and secure funds that maybe weren't built into a budget, but
Sure.
you now need to do something about
Absolutely.
that. When you have it planned out, you have a greater ability to accomplish the things you
Absolutely.
need in a kind of a proactive way.
Absolutely. So we do receive requests for more than just 1 year. So they're not just annual requests that we're reviewing every year. We're reviewing up to 3 and 5 year requests.
Right.
So we can plan for the future and make those decisions. So there's definitely a lot of work that goes into it. I think it's a very good process that's certainly benefited the community and made having everyone be a part of it has certainly made it much easier when we go and present the needs at town meeting in June every year. And it's certainly been a very good, worthwhile process that's had a huge benefit and allowed us to develop a consistent amount to fund these projects and a very consistent way to weigh the needs and priorities from the entire town and school, as opposed to looking at different projects independently.
No, I agree, Michael. It certainly sounds, and I have seen, having become the superintendent now into my second year, the value of the work that the Capital Improvements Planning Committee does. Well, Michael, with all of this, I think we're kind of bringing our segment to a close. I just want to acknowledge you and for the community's benefit that the good work that goes on in our schools, in our classrooms, the teachers with students could not happen if it weren't for the work of you as the Director of Finance and Operation and your staff to keep our buildings clean, to keep them safe, to obtain the resources that we need to do the good work each and every day. And I want to thank you on behalf of the community
thank you.
for the good
Thank
work
you.
you do every day, and for the affordability that you give to the teachers of the district to be able to work with students at the highest level. So thank you for being my
Thank
guest
you.
today. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Great. Thank you.